We're looking at Module 5 novice problems, and now we're looking at problem number 2. This is a chance to see how Excel Miner will allow us to use the capabilities to create charts and graphs. So here's the problem. Again, we're dealing with the 425 observations in the credit data that we looked at. And we want to build some box plots, some scatter plots, and some histograms. And the capability of Excel Miner to create these graphs is interesting. They look a lot like our pivot graphs in that you can change things on the fly in the graph. It's not a static thing. You can change it. You can make it address different sorts of questions. And very neat sort of capabilities. So first of all, let's do a box plot in terms of months customer on the y-axis and marital status on the x-axis. So if we go to Explore in the data analysis, you'll find something called a chart wizard. We open the chart wizard and say, what do you want to do? And by the way, where's your data? Well, I want some box plots, so I'm going to put a little mark there in that box. And I'm going to say, I want you to use the data. I have previously named my data credit data. And you know how to do that. You grab the data and you go up to this box, you type in the name that you want, hit a return, and from that time on, it's called credit data. As a matter of fact, let me leave this for a second and show you. I'm going to pull this down, go to credit data, and there's all the data that I've got in the 400 and something records that we're looking at. I also added a column here called liquidity, which is the sum of savings and checking, which we'll be using later. So now let's go back to our Explorer, Chart Wizard. I want to build a box plot. I want to build a box plot for customer on the y-axis and marital status on the x-axis. So I go to next. What is on the y-axis? Well, customer is on that axis, months customer, excuse me. And on the x-axis, I have marital status. Marital status. Do I want it in a panel? At this point, I don't want that, so I'll hit finish. And there's my box plot. Here are the three categories of marital status: divorced, married, and single. Here are the months customer. You can see there's a bigger distribution among the singles in terms of the months customer, tighter distribution for married, and also for divorced. But fairly broad. This whisker goes out pretty far here on the end of this thing. So here's our box plots. They're kind of a vertical form of a distribution. Here's the first percentile, here's the second percentile. The dotted line is the mean. Of course, the mean is greater than the median. The median is the second percentile, or the 50th percentile. Why? Well, because that's the middle point, and the mean is being stretched out here further by these values that are larger on the high end of the distribution. And the same here. This is the only one where the median, the 50th percentile, is greater than the mean. We have some capabilities over here where we can make some changes. Let's say that I only want to look at the first 300, and let's say I'm trying to get to 350. There's 352, 344. It's going to be, it's tight how you make those changes, but you can make those changes. My monitor has a very high resolution, so these outputs here appear small, and I apologize for that. But it's one of the problems with getting an advanced computer is that Software hasn't caught up with it yet. I can also change a variety of other things. I can look at change the number of months employed and see how that affects our distribution. Now I'm only looking at data where the months employed is between 0 and 44.44. Obviously I'd want to be 45 or 50 or whatever that number should be. But you see the dynamic nature of this thing. I can also say I don't want to look at the married or the divorced people, so I take the divorced people out. Age. I can say, look, I'm only interested in young people from 18 to about 30. Here's the picture there, and I can return this. So I can ask all kinds of what-if questions with these charts. I can also copy it. I'll go over here. There's a little clipboard. I can copy it, then I can paste it into my workbook and keep that. So let me discard this for a second. Let's look at the second chart. We're going to do a scattered matrix of age and liquidity, and we're going to colorize by marital status. It gives us a different dimension. It says, all right, I'm going to look at age and liquidity, and then I'm going to divide that up into marital status. And of course, we know there are 3 categories. There's divorced, married, and single. So let's do a scatter matrix. Let's go to Chart Wizard. There is a scatter matrix here. I go to next. It says, what do you want? Well, what I said I wanted was age and liquidity. Liquidity is that extra column that I added that is the sum of checking and savings. Okay, you have to put that in there yourself. So go to finish, and there it is. I can colorize by, what did I want to colorize by? I wanted to colorize by marital status. So I'm going to pull this down and find marital status here. And then here's the legend for marital status. The blue is divorced, the gold is married, and the purple is silver. You can see we're not talking about a lot of married people. We're talking about a lot of divorced and single people. And what you get here is a scatter diagram of these 2 variables together. And you can see from the scatter diagram that for most folks, the value on the x-axis, which is that liquidity, is fairly low. Okay, not a lot of. Here's an individual that's got a very high level of liquidity at that point, but most of us are down here. This graph, this scatter diagram, is this one, but it's this one turned on its side, and so you can see that if I turn this guy, if I rotate this guy over, this is what I get. In fact, this point here is that point there, okay? And that extreme point there is that extreme point there. So this is a useful way of getting both histograms of the age and liquidity, and then also a plot. And the same, we can change variables over here and say, look, I want to look at people that are employed fewer than, let's say, 70 months. And so that changes the graph. When I make that change, well, it didn't change it there because we're not looking at those particular elements. So, what you wind up changing, let's say I want to change age. Where's age here? I change age here. I don't want all those oldsters in there. I want younger folks under 50. So there's 49.35. That's under 50. And here's the new data that is reflected there. Let me get rid of that. Discard it. The last one is a histogram of customers, month's customer, color by marital status, and a panel by housing. So how do we do that? Let's go to histogram in our chart wizard. Just follow the instructions. Want a frequency distribution. We don't want the cumulative or the reverse cumulative. We say what we want is months customer. Then it asks, do you want a color? Yes, we want a color by marital status. So do you want a panel? Yes, I want a panel by housing. What does a panel do? It breaks things out into individual elements of housing. You live in your parents' basement, you rent, or you own. And here's the diagram. Again, we're colorizing by marital status. Here is the graph for housing for others. Here's a graph for housing for your own. Here's the graph for housing for rentals. And of course, we've got these capabilities of making changes over here if we like. Not looking at all the data. Let's say we only want to look at 217 data points. That's the first 217 records. Okay. All right, that concludes the capabilities of Excel Miner with graphs. Very interesting capabilities, very useful and dynamic. That's the end of our discussion of Problem 2, Module 5.